This podcast contains adult language and stories of true crime. If you don't like laughing, crying, or being horrified at the actions of other humans, this podcast is not for you.
Everybody, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 16 of Unsolved Mysteries.
Hello.
This is Say hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. This is the show where we rewatch, recap, and give you the latest updates to cases featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries. And I'm Alison.
I'm Eliza.
And I'm Karlin.
And welcome. So as you guys probably know by now, for every review that we receive, we donate $1 to a different organization. And this month's organization is the Trans Clippers Project, suggested by our patron Taskier. So thanks again, Taskier. And every time you leave us a review, we donate $1. So we have some awesome new patrons to shout out. Eliza, do you want to give a shout out to our new people?
Yes, thank you so much to Jake H., Joe S., Carrie B., Katie M., Tara M., Megan A., Rosanna, Christina D., Angie S., Caitlin, Nicole H., Elizabeth L., and Eric W. We appreciate you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, you will now get ad-free episodes, which to me is completely worth the cost. You'll get 2 additional episodes a month and early access to listener short stacks, along with other goodies like stickers and merch in the mail. So you can go to patreon.com/Unsolved Mysteries Podcast and support us there.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we covering this episode?
The first segment is a wanted segment, and it's about Patrick, who actually went more commonly by Patty Mitchell.
And I have a Lost Love segment about Victor Simon.
And then I have a wanted segment, and it's about a total dick bitch named Joe Smith.
Ugh.
And then an unexplained little ghosty segment about the Kelsay House.
Woo! All right, let's do it.
Okay.
So this is the wanted segment of Patrick Mitchell. And I mentioned before he was more well known as Patty Mitchell, so I'll be calling him that sometimes too. And I just want to call out ahead of time that a lot of my information comes from an article in Atavist magazine by Josh Dean called The Life and Times of the Stopwatch Gang, because it's a super in-depth article that was really helpful.
Cool.
Okay, so the segment opens with a reenactment, and it is December 14th, 1987 at 8:30 a.m. in Gainesville, Florida. So cue a very dramatic slow-mo shot of a man in a Reagan mask throwing an axe through the glass front door of a bank.
Oh my God, it was so Point Break. I loved it.
And
I was like,
do that in Batman, one of the Batman movies? Too?
Yeah, they do it in Batman too. I think they have clown masks in Batman.
Oh, maybe it's clowns. I was thinking it was presidents. Okay.
Yeah, but Point Break is all presidents, and I was like, is Point Break based on Patrick Mitchell?
Oh, okay, because when I saw it, I was like, isn't this from a movie or something? Mm-hmm. And I've never seen Point Break, so, but that makes sense. No, I've never seen it.
It's amazing.
I haven't seen it either.
What? Oh.
Okay, we have homework now already.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's so good. It's so good.
Okay, that explains. I was totally going to ask you guys if it was a scene from a movie. Okay, so he and another man, also in a Reagan mask, enter through the broken glass and yell, "Nobody move! Just put your hands up and no one will get hurt."
And 2 Reagans is just just many.
Too many.
I mean, 1 Reagan was too many.
Reagan
Let's be honest.
Many, and 2 is
2 is double the too many.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the bank was not yet open for the day. In less than 5 minutes, the robbers made off with almost $500,000. Because of a similar MO, the FBI narrowed down on Richard Joseph Landry, also known as Michael Garrison, also known as Roger Lanthorn.
Oh, boy.
They all turned out to be the same man, Patrick Michael Mitchell. According to Stack, quote, one of the most skilled bank robbers in the country. Stack tells us that during the last 15 years, his heists have netted close to $3 million. Stack also tells us that Mitchell is an escape artist and a master of disguise. Stack says that Mitchell changes identities like he changes shirts. And he tells us that each time he robs a bank, he wears a different comic mask. Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, and even Bozo the Clown. So Stack says that the FBI believes the masks are his way of thumbing his nose at authority. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty obvious, Mr. Stack. It's also just a super easy way to not be recognized when, like, your entire head is covered. And I just noted that he was much better at being a master of disguise than our last master of disguise, which was that guy with the terrible wigs.
Which was not a master at all.
No, not. Really not. Stack tells us that at the time of the airing, Patrick Mitchell has robbed 14 banks in the U.S. and Canada, made 2 prison escapes, and he's the newest addition to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. Supervisor Special Agent FBI William Fluharty tells us that Mitchell can be best described as confident, even vain to a certain extent, as they believe him to have taken the prescription drug Retin A, which, quote, supposedly helps keep your youthful appearance.
Oh my God, is this just a retinol?
Yeah,
that
I think so.
That we all put on our face now?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so.
I just thought that was really funny that they called it out. Like, what's the point, really?
What's the point? And also, it's just completely normal now.
Yeah, they were just like, he's so vain.
He uses moisturizer.
Yeah.
Truly.
Fluharty goes on to say that Mitchell is described as having an athletic build. Quote, he likes the ladies. He fancies himself a gourmet cook. And they even end up recovering some cookbooks from the trunk of his car. So
9 cookbooks. 9
What his deal
cookbooks.
is.
They call it out
Damn.
specifically.
Yeah.
Also, they show him they show a picture of him when they say that he has an athletic build, and he has like the most solid dad bod. Like,
Oh, I don't remember which picture they. I have
It's
a lot
super
of pictures
funny.
of him, and through the years, I mean, he does look like kind of like a movie star type.
I mean,
in
he's
his
good
early
looking.
days,
Yeah,
like, he's
he's a
almost like a
cutie.
Burt Reynolds type in some of his early
Yes.
photos.
I would have gone to Studio 54 with him. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that picture, I think he's like at a sink or something, and it's like washing dishes maybe. It's like, you
Oh,
cute.
yeah.
Oh,
What's
I don't
hotter
remember
than that?
Ha.
All right. So, Stack says that over the last 11 years, they've come up with at least 25 aliases he has used.
Wow.
In 1983, Mitchell had been given a 20-year sentence in an Arizona state prison for bank robbery. May 9th, 1986, Mitchell and 2 other prisoners who were assigned to janitorial duties made an escape that was meticulously planned and precisely timed by Mitchell. So they show a reenactment of this as well. And the men, they're just kind of like mopping near a vending machine area in a hallway. And then when the guards are like off talking to each other, not looking at them at all, they hop on top of the vending machine, remove one of the ceiling tiles, and climb up inside. And they're gone.
Oh,
It's pretty brazen.
So, and then apparently none of the guards noticed they were missing for like a while. So the 3 men changed into street clothes they had hidden in a utility room and just walked out of the prison. Stack
you do.
says that the girlfriend of one of the prisoners was waiting for them outside in a car. The prisoner had tricked her into thinking they were on a weekend furlough, and the escape was accomplished.
oh,
It's so funny.
One of the men was later arrested in Atlanta, but the other 2 prisoners, Patrick Mitchell and Johnny Salazar Stewart, headed to Gainesville, Florida. Fluharty says they would come into a town a month or 2 in advance, stay in a local hotel, and basically they would just do their research on whatever bank they were going to hit next. So Stack says that in the fall of 1987, Mitchell and Stewart began planning a robbery in Gainesville. The men got a storage unit that had a good view of both the bank and the armored car service that served the bank. According to Stack, Mitchell would basically just like pretend to be moving boxes in and out of his car, like to the unit and to his car, like all day, while he was watching what the bank was doing. Mitchell would never go in the bank, but Johnny Stewart was sent inside to scout it out. So Stewart actually goes in and opens up a bank account. Fluharty says, actually, it's a pretty good idea. This individual now, after opening an account, has a legitimate reason for being in the bank. He explains that there would be no questions asked. You're just a customer using the bank. And by doing this, he can also see like when the deliveries are made from the armored car service, how they process that, all this stuff. So the day of the robbery, Mitchell and Stewart met at a storage unit. At 7:50 a.m., the employees began filing in to prepare for the bank to open in about an hour and 10 minutes. At 8 a.m., the armored car left to pick up deposits from nearby stores. At 8:10 a.m., the Gainesville police operator received a bomb threat. The person on the phone tells the operator the bomb is going to go off in 10 minutes at a junior high in northeast Gainesville, which was in the same police district as the bank. 8:22, the armored car guards arrive at the bank, making its total deposits on hand $300,000. At this same time, police were being dispatched to the bomb threat site 32 miles away. 8:25 a.m., Mitchell and Stewart bust into the bank, as per our opening scene in the Reagan masks. They're pointing their guns at the staff, asking, "Where's the money in the bags from the armored car?" And they do an interview with head teller Virginia Fields, and she says that she thought he was either going to shoot someone or take someone hostage. Rhonda Broski, who was a teller there at the time, says she remembered laying on the floor thinking she wouldn't see her husband or her kids again. Oh. So we always talk about how it's kind of like a victimless crime, but it's really not. Like, these people are afraid for their lives.
Yeah, it's traumatic.
So as the robbers are leaving with the money, one of them pulls out a zipper bag, which when I saw the reenactment, I was like, that just looks like a DOP kit or something. And he says, "This is a bomb. Nobody move and it won't go off." And then he leaves it by the bank entrance. As they rushed away, one of the robbers dropped a bag of money, but they still made off with almost $500,000. The bomb was obviously fake, and turns out it was a shaving kit. So I was like, called it. And also why?
I was thinking about that, and it's like, those poor people, they probably were afraid it was real, but if you really think about it, these bank robbers are not also going to be people who make bombs.
Yeah.
No.
Like, they're not going to take the time to do that.
Especially a bomb that can somehow sense movement. Like, you know what I mean? Like, none of it made sense, and I feel like if I was there, I'd probably be like, we all know it's probably not real, but what if it is? Like, it's such a conundrum.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's a fake bomb, obviously, but it buys them tons of time to escape.
Yep.
8:40 a.m., a woman that worked at the storage facility saw Mitchell driving away in his car with a rack full of clothes in the back seat, and this was the very last sighting of Mitchell in Gainesville. So 2 months after the Gainesville robbery, Johnny Stewart was apprehended. He was tried and convicted for his role in the robbery, and at the time of the UM airing, he was serving a 40-year sentence. A year after the robbery, Mitchell's car was found abandoned in a storage facility in Tallahassee, Florida. The car was wiped clean of evidence, but there were several cookbooks in the back seat. You know, because he was probably like wooing women on the go. Yeah. Stack tells us that in the last 2 years, there have been sightings of Mitchell in Texas, Georgia, and Alabama, but he is Canadian, and authorities think he could have returned to Canada. They know that his last known alias was Johnny Grant. Fluharty says that they need to find him because he doesn't think the Gainesville robbery will be his last. He says based on Mitchell's history, it's not if he's going to hit, but it's when he's going to hit. So then UM does a short one-sentence update. But there's a long story.
Always.
As
There's always a much longer story.
Oh my gosh. We already talked about some of his aliases. I think they mentioned most of them in the segment, but he was also known sometimes as the presidential robber because of the masks. As mentioned, the robbery in the segment was not Patty Mitchell's only robbery. Patty was part of a Canadian bank robbing gang called the Stopwatch Gang.
Cute.
Which is like kind of adorable. Definitely the nerdiest gang name I've ever heard. The other two members were Canadians Lionel Wright and Stephen Reed. They were named for a stopwatch that Reed wore around his neck and were apparently famous for their speedy heists, nonviolent methods, and politeness to victims.
Oh, Canadian
like,
bank robbers.
Very nice.
So nice, so Canadian. So the gang pulled off robberies in both the U.S. and Canada, and from 1974 to 1980, they robbed more than 140 banks and stole the equivalent of about 15 million Canadian dollars.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I
I know, and like their story does not start here where I'm telling it. There's so much more. So I'm actually debating possibly doing a Stopwatch Gang something on Patreon because there's so much more to like them as a group, but the segment is just about Patrick Mitchell. So
Sure. Fun.
Yeah. So the first story I'll tell you about them is that they successfully completed a gold heist in 1974 from the Ottawa airport. So basically what happened is in April of 1974, Mitchell and Reed had met this Air Canada baggage handler at a bar near the airport. The guy was selling expensive calculators he'd stolen from his day job. So they befriended him because, like...
Obviously.
I mean, I think the term thick as thieves comes somewhere out of this. Like... So they make friends with him. He ends up telling them that once a month, a shit ton of gold gets moved through the airport on its way to the mint.
Oh my God.
So, of course, the Stopwatch Gang is like, yo, listen, we'll give you $100,000 if you tell us the next time the gold is going to come through the airport.
Oh, wow.
And the guy's like, yes, definitely, I'll take you up on that. I'm just, like, selling these calculators. It's not going great.
Although, good God, remember how much calculators used to cost?
Yeah. Like the ones we had to get in high school?
Yes, I couldn't even afford that T89, whatever that was. That's like for rich people.
That's
not
completely
equitable.
Unacceptable that we as students were expected to purchase those.
Yes.
So he's like, yes, absolutely. I'll tell you when the gold is going to be there. So a shipment of unrefined gold bars was being moved from the Red Lake gold mines in northwestern Ontario to the Royal Canadian Mint. The gold at the airport was kept in a cage in an Air Canada freight terminal, secured by one padlock.
Oh. What? No.
Between 11:30 and midnight that night, the terminal was manned by one security guard. So basically...
It's just a minimalist. They're just minimalists there.
Yeah.
Just don't want to overpay for anything. So basically, it's kind of a story too, but the basics of it is that the Stopwatch Gang threatened him with a gun and then they handcuff him to the cage and steal all the gold.
Ouch.
Mm-hmm. It was later determined that there were 6 gold bars taken and that their value was close to $750,000, or slightly more than $4 million today, making it the biggest gold heist in Canada's history.
Whoa.
So this baggage handler / calculator thief, his name was Gary Kutinosh, and he was not the brightest crayon in the box. He immediately went and bought a Harley Davidson and a giant diamond pinky ring.
Ew, not that finger.
Ah, hate that.
So the Ottawa police already suspected that this was probably an inside job. And here's Kutinosh just dinking around, moving suitcases, wearing a giant pinky ring.
Oh my God, to work? Idiots.
So the police were like, it's probably the guy in the giant pinky ring with all those calculators falling out of his pockets.
He's like, who, me?
He's like, what?
No, it's definitely not me.
So the police asked him for information in exchange for his freedom. So he agreed and started helping them. Also complicating things was the fact that Mitchell did not pay him the $100,000 outright. So he told him, like, we'll wait till the gold is fenced and then I can pay you the money. But Kutinosh could not be cool and, like, kept calling Mitchell and asking about the money.
This is exactly like the Lufthansa heist in Goodfellas. Like the famous Lufthansa heist in New York City that happened. This is exactly the same story. Like,
really?
They got an idiot to help them. And then, like, a bunch of idiots were involved. And then all of the idiots started spending money. And then they just started killing them because they, like, were, like, taking them out one by one.
Because they're just being dummies.
Like, buying pink Cadillacs and fur coats and pinky rings. Like, what a mess. Just be cool, honey bunny. Be cool. Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, my gosh.
And Kutinosh could not be cool. So, at one point, Mitchell even gave him $10,000 of his own money to get him to chill out and stop attracting attention.
Oh, my gosh.
So the police were basically waiting for Mitchell to slip up again because they needed more proof than just Kutnosh's story that this happened in order to arrest. So they basically spend a year waiting for something to happen. When finally Kutnosh told the police that Mitchell had recently asked him to let a suitcase slip through customs. And what do you guys think was in that suitcase? Just full of cocaine,
Bling,
baby.
bling, bling.
Full of cocaine.
Oh, that's zagged. I'm here for that. That's fun.
That's not what I thought it was going to be.
I know.
It's called a Canadian snowstorm.
Yes. The Great White North. So, ultimately, they arrested Mitchell and Wright for drug smuggling in 1975.
Okay.
They got sentenced to 17 years, and then 3 years were added on for Mitchell after they tapped his phone and caught him trying to sell the gold bars. So they still couldn't pin him with, like, the thief of the gold bars, but they were like, you have stolen gold bars. You're trying to sell them.
You're trying to sell them, yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Mitchell and Reed were sent to Millhaven Institution, Canada's most secure prison. Obviously, it's the most secure prison, so it's got the worst criminals inside, and it was known for being super violent. So on Mitchell and Reed's first day in the prison, an inmate was bludgeoned to death in the yard with a metal pipe.
Oh, yikes.
So Mitchell and Reed were like, fuck this shit, we gotta get out of here. How do we get out of here? So they start just prepping. So they start jogging 5 miles a day, doing like tons of push-ups, pull-ups.
Whoa.
They're just building their strength so that whatever plan they come up with, they're going to be ready. So the two actually made several escape attempts that didn't work. At one point, they were involved with one escape attempt where they got kind of close. People were climbing the fences, and one of their buddies they were working on this with got like shot down on the fences.
Oh, wow.
And at one point, them and a group of other guys broke into a shed on the prison grounds and started digging a tunnel underneath it using garden spades they had stolen as well as just like their bare hands.
Wow.
But then they had to put the dirt somewhere. So this moved really slow because they would have to like sneakily take the dirt out of the shed and like spread it around the prison grounds in places that it wasn't obvious.
Whoa.
So it was taking them like months to do this. So they end up digging the tunnel and they're about 12 yards away from the prison fence when one day the tennis court blacktop starts buckling and the whole fucking thing collapses in, just revealing the tunnel.
No.
Because they didn't go far enough down. So months and months and months of work is just immediately exposed on one day.
Oh my
Oh, man. They needed an engineer on their team.
Seriously.
I mean, you can't say they're not motivated. They're pretty clever.
Oh my God. So the next plot the stopwatch gang comes up with was let's just have good behavior. Like, let's try to get into like a medium security prison because what we're doing here isn't working. So
I can't believe they've let them even talk to each other anymore.
I know. So they start doing this good behavior thing, and Reed decides that he's going to start learning hairstyling because he's like, if I keep doing this, like eventually they'll have to send me somewhere else to learn more skills in this. So he starts doing hairstyling. They're just on their best behavior, and eventually the plan works. Reed first is sent off to a medium security prison to get more hairstyling training. Mitchell keeps up on his good behavior, and he's like being involved in programs and stuff like that. And 6 months later, he's also sent to the prison. So
how much
Reed.
hairstyling training do you need in prison? It isn't like you're putting foils in. Like,
I
what are
know.
you
He must
doing?
have known that other people had that happen or something because
Yeah.
I don't know where that came
I know.
from.
I love that he's like, they will have to send me away.
Yeah,
They will see
'cause-
my talent and they will want to Alexander Hamilton me.
He had big dreams of hairstyling.
Oh, man.
So Reed is 6 months ahead of Mitchell at this point because he's already been there. So by the time Mitchell gets there, he's like the star of the prison hockey team. All the wardens love him. Like he's just like on this path. So in August of 79, Reed is allowed a day trip to a hair salon in Kingston, accompanied again by one guard.
Oh my God.
On this sweet little day trip, they're like, hey, let's go get Chinese food. So while they're at the Chinese restaurant, Reed is like, I gotta pee. Walks away into the bathroom, climbs out a fucking window, runs 5 blocks to the Holiday Inn where he has arranged a getaway driver to meet him.
Oh my God.
The getaway driver's inside just like having a coffee. As he's walking in, he looks around and he notices this giant white banner. And there is an Ontario Detectives Convention going on.
Oh. How is this not a movie? This is
Seriously.
This is crazy.
So, and like, he's like a known criminal. This is not his first
rodeo.
Like, his picture's been out there. He's also been gone from the bathroom for like more than 10 minutes. So he's like, the guy probably knows I'm gone. Like, he starts freaking out internally, but he's like, play it cool, play it cool. So he like goes in and sits with the guy for a little bit while he finishes his coffee, and then they just make their way out.
Wow.
So he escapes. Reed gets back to work robbing banks again so that he can raise money for Mitchell to get out, because Mitchell's still in there. So Reed made his way back to Ottawa and got a gun and went back to work robbing banks. While this is happening, it's like been a while and Mitchell is getting a little impatient, and he starts thinking like, maybe Reed's not coming back for me. I need to start working on another plan. So one day, Mitchell's brother Bobby comes in to visit him, and upon his visit, he whispered to Mitchell, "Today's the day." That night, after his regular 5-mile run, Mitchell came back to his cell and chugged a big glass of water in which he'd been steeping a giant wad of tobacco.
Oh, give himself tobacco poisoning?
Oh my.
Without having any idea how much to drink or exactly what the consequences to his body would be, he poisoned himself with the tobacco water because he had heard that it could induce false cardiac arrest.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Prison must be terrible.
Seriously.
Oh my God.
After drinking it, Mitchell basically starts passing out, and he starts thinking to himself, I just killed myself. He's like, I'm dying, and I overdid it. I'm dying. So like a few months earlier, Reed and Mitchell had seen a sick inmate get moved to a hospital accompanied by one guard. So that's where they started developing this plan. So Reed had told Mitchell at that time if he could get out this way, he would need to make sure he was being transported in an ambulance to the hospital. So Mitchell knew he had to be sick or injured enough to require hospital care, something they couldn't just do at the prison. So they had heard about a prisoner who had overdosed on nicotine, and the prison staff had thought he was having a heart attack. So that's where this whole plan developed.
Wow.
And cigarettes were easy to come by in the prison, so they were like, got it, that's our plan.
Can you imagine, wouldn't your stomach hurt so bad?
Oh, honey, just wait.
Yeah.
So bad.
So for weeks before this, Mitchell had been laying his plan by, like, he would go to them and complain about chest pain, and he would go say, I need to see the prison nurse, a whole bunch to, like, get them thinking he's not doing well. So after downing the gross tobacco juice, he basically collapses, and he begins, quote, flopping around in the swill like a fish out of water. His heart is pounding. He's, like, dripping with sweat.
Oh, my God.
So a nurse is like, he needs to go to the hospital. So he gets handcuffed to a gurney, put in leg irons, and loaded onto an ambulance accompanied by 2 paramedics and 2 unarmed security guards. And he was, like, so sick that he was hallucinating. Like, he saw all kinds of wild stuff while this was happening. So they go to the hospital, and there's a sign outside the ER entrance saying that it was closed and redirecting traffic to a side door. So the driver turns and instead backs into a dimly lit drive and stops next to a black van where 2 men were waiting in green scrubs and surgical masks. One of the EMTs had begun relaying the patient's vitals when he saw something that made him stop. The taller of the 2 men in scrubs was pointing a silver revolver directly at the prison guards.
Oh, my God.
The armored man ordered a guard to remove Mitchell's handcuffs and then use them to cuff both guards to the inside of the ambulance. So the man, of course, is Reed. And he throws Mitchell over his shoulder because he's still, like, dying. and they make their escape. Reed had been avoiding Kingston since his escape, but he had hired someone to rent a basement apartment where he could take Mitchell, thinking it was wiser to stay close rather than to make a risk of running out of town. He had given specific instructions about what he needed in his apartment: filet mignon, lobster tails, Seagram's VO, and a case of Mouton Cadet wine, in addition to basic groceries and medical supplies.
These guys are friendship goals. I love them.
Seriously. He's like, my boy's getting out. I got to treat him.
When's the last time you guys got me a surf and turf? Come on.
I know. And some Seagrams.
I know.
I just died when I read that part. So basically, they get back to his apartment. Mitchell is not doing well. They both think he's dying at this point.
Oh.
Reed has brought a hacksaw so that he could get the leg irons off. And at one point, he said it crossed his mind that he would need to use it on the body if he died so that he could smuggle him out.
Oh, God.
So he's in a panic. He's like, I just got to get something in his stomach. I got to get something in his stomach. So the easiest thing was he busted the cork down on the bottle of wine and just started pouring the wine down Mitchell's throat.
What? To get him to throw up?
So Mitchell starts kind of gurgling and then coughing, and then he just sits up really abruptly and vomits out this black ball of goo.
Oh. God. Okay.
Ew.
And then within a few minutes, apparently he was mostly back to normal.
Oh my God.
So the two spent the evening eating, drinking, and listening to police scanners.
Okay, can you imagine eating that meal after vomiting up tobacco? Ugh,
oh my gosh. That sounds like a romantic evening. I like
know,
it.
It's kind of cute.
Yeah.
So Reed is now a full-blown hairstylist. So he dyes and perms Mitchell's hair. So that's why when you see some of his different mugshots and stuff, he has different hair in all of them.
Oh, it's hysterical.
So they procured fake IDs. They made their way to Burlington, Vermont, from Burlington to New York City to Florida, and in Florida is where they reunite with Wright, the third stopwatch gang member. Wright had been working the front counter of a motel there for 3 years while all this is going on. And Reed was like, I'm pretty sure he would have just kept working there if we didn't show up. He probably was like, I'm cool with this. I'm good.
Yeah.
He's like, this isn't so bad.
This is a normal life.
Yeah, I love it. So the next planned robbery was at a Tampa department store. Mitchell had written the whole plan with Reed and Wright going inside, and Reed was finally like, dude, you're in this too. We need to be all sharing this equally. So Mitchell's like, I've never even used a gun before, and Reed's like, I'm going to show you. So this one involves they had stolen a Brinks uniform that one of them was going to be wearing. They go through this whole plan where Mitchell was supposed to be pulling out a gun at the right time and they'd pull off this robbery. But Mitchell ended up struggling when he tried to pull the gun out of his waistband and got it stuck in the band of his underwear and couldn't get it out.
Oh.
So this article had interviews with Reed and he goes, it was like a comedy sketch, said Reed. He gave himself a wedgie. So they were panicking for a minute, but they managed to get inside of an elevator and Reed was like, dude, be cool. He's like, you're fumbling with your underwear. Just be cool. I'm in a uniform and I have a gun. No one's going to think this is weird. Just be cool. So they were eventually able to make it out and pull it off. But Reed and Wright decided that from then on, Mitchell would just be the driver. They were like, I know we said we wanted you in the action with us, but now we don't. So they go back to robbing banks, which is where the story from the UM reenactment comes in. And they would do this a lot with this same MO. They'd stake out the bank, learn all the delivery drivers' routes, steal cars and skip out of town. Every time it was the same. After Florida, they decided to go west, and San Diego proved very profitable. In one 7-week spree, they took $21,270 from a Wells Fargo, $24,661 from a solar credit union, $19,225 from a First Bank, $8,210 from a Bank of America, all in 2 weeks.
Wow.
It was also around this time when a witness had reported seeing Reed wearing that stopwatch, and that's when the FBI named them the Stopwatch Gang.
Wow.
Because they had better luck with, like, using these catchy terms that caught people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
So they become pretty notorious, and a reward was actually offered for their capture, which was pretty rare at the time. So they just keep going, doing more. The money went fast. They're buying cars, planes, gambling trips, frequent changes of address. And Mitchell, born in Ottawa, Canada, even claims to have given away $300,000 in 2 years. Quote, "You can spend it in a year. Isn't that terrible?" said Mitchell. "But when you're on the run, you pay $3,000 or $4,000 a month for an apartment. You eat in restaurants. You buy 2 or 3 cars a year because you're always leaving cars behind."
Wow.
So
That sounds fun.
no, but stressful. Like, I can't imagine living with that stress for that
Yeah,
long.
it's like, just get a job.
Just get a job.
So, as you guys just said, Mitchell eventually got really tired of this, and he told his counterparts he needed a break. So the gang parted ways after the Bay Area heists. Mitchell went north through California into Oregon and Washington, where he met a waitress and holed up in a cabin near Mount St. Helens.
Oh.
So he does that for a while. The other two go and keep robbing for a while. And then in 1980, Mitchell is like, "I want back in."
He's like, "This is boring."
Yep. So he rejoins the gang. They set their sights on another large bank robbery. This one also didn't go off without a hitch, but they were ultimately able to pull it off, again, making out with $283,000 in cash.
Oh my God.
But this time, it was Mitchell's job to stay behind and dispose of the disguises. He was supposed to have burnt them, but he decided to use a dumpster that they had used before in other robberies instead. But usually what he would do is, like, wait for the garbage truck to come and, like, confirm, like, the stuff has left, we're good.
Right.
But with this one, there was a policeman eating his lunch in the lot, so he got spooked and left. So later that day, an elderly couple collecting cans found the bag full of wigs, beards, CoverGirl makeup, license plates, cigarettes, and several Bank of America bags.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
The police were able to lift a fingerprint off of one of the bags. They also found paperwork for a car rental and the fake license used to rent it, which had a photo of, quote, "a skinny man with jug ears and a receding hairline."
Ouch.
In October of 1980, the FBI tracked down Reed at a Mexican restaurant in Sedona and eventually were able to start tracking both Reed and Wright. They kind of, like, got eyes on both of them. So at this point, arrests are out for all 3 members of the Stopwatch Gang. Reed and Wright end up getting arrested November 1st after they've kind of started tracking them. Mitchell, at the time, had been out of town visiting his girlfriend's parents in Iowa when the arrests were made. So while Reed and Wright did time and were eventually sent back to prison in Canada, Mitchell stays on the lam this whole time. So he starts then pulling off solo bank robberies. He starts in Florida. He heads west. He's, like, hitting banks along the way. He kind of, like, botched a robbery at a department store in Arizona and gets caught. So he's charged with armed robbery and brought into night court, where a judge who had no idea that he was one of the FBI's top 10 most wanted criminals was standing before him, set the bail at $16,500.
Oh, wow.
Mitchell called their old friend from Dundee, who flew to Phoenix with $20,000 and handed the cash to a bail bondsman, setting Mitchell free again to resume robbing banks.
Oh, Jesus.
A year later, the FBI caught up to him, this time in Florida. He was flown to California, convicted, and sentenced to 10 years for the Bank of America robbery in San Diego, 20 years for stealing $200,000 from a bank in Arkansas, and 18 years for the armed robbery of the department store in Phoenix. He still owed Canada 20 years for the gold heist. The Arizona state attorney nixed a deal that would have allowed Mitchell to serve his entire sentence in federal custody, where he'd have his best shot at a transfer back to Canada, and he was sent to the maximum security penitentiary in Florence, Arizona. So 4 years into his sentence is when Mitchell did the thing where he crawled up into the air ducts and did the escape there.
Okay.
So that's when UM caught up with him.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
So
story.
Mitchell then flees to the Philippines, assumes an identity of Gary Weber, a prosperous insurance investigator, and married a woman there and had a second son named Richard. He lived happily in a large house in the mountains on Luzon for 5 years, making occasional trips back to the U.S. to rob banks. So the whole time, the 15 years he's in the Philippines, he's just coming back to the U.S. and robbing banks here and there to make his money.
He has to. He has no choice.
He cannot not.
He cannot.
So,
not.
In 1990 is when he's placed on the 10 Most Wanted list. In 93, America's Most Wanted reran a segment about him. A couple that Mitchell had been friendly with in the Philippines caught the broadcast while they were vacationing in Hawaii. So they're living in the Philippines, but they're vacationing in Hawaii, so they see this U.S. television with AMA on it.
Whoa, what are the chances?
Totally. So they recognize him, of course, and call the FBI. By the time the agents located Mitchell's home, he was gone again.
Wow.
So Mitchell at this point knows he cannot go back to his family in the Philippines. So he flees again back to the U.S. and starts robbing again.
God.
Which is where he ends up committing his messiest robbery yet in South Haven, Mississippi. So he goes back to his old MO where he creates a diversion by calling in bomb threats.
Mm-hmm.
But the local police this time were onto it a bit, and instead of going to the bomb threats, they actually put a close watch on like every bank in town.
Wow.
Oh.
When Mitchell fled, one of them, wearing ridiculous neon-colored tassels on his eyeglasses and carrying $160,000 in cash, he was quickly apprehended, and his long life of crime finally came to an end.
Wait, tassels on his glasses?
Yes. I'll show you some other pictures of when they were the stopwatch gang. They would get silly with the costumes sometimes. There was one where they were like both dressed as Colonel Sanders. Like they would get wild.
And it's
with
also like bank robbers do that because it's also really distracting, right? Like people are focused on how clownish they look, so they don't look at how tall they are, how much they weigh, or anything. They're just like,
Totally. They'll be like, what were they wearing? And they're like, neon glasses with tassels.
yeah.
I don't know.
So it's really brilliant because that's really the only thing you see. If you see two men dressed as Colonel Sanders, that's all you remember. You don't remember how tall they were, what color their eyes were. Yeah.
Yep. So finally, he's put in prison one final time, sentenced to 65 years at Leavenworth. Mitchell was a grandfather by the time he was finally caught. His son Kevin had 2 boys, and Mitchell, with the written support of many people, Stephen Reed included, pleaded with the U.S. government to transfer him back to Canada so that at least they could visit and get to know him. 5 times he was denied. In early 2006, Mitchell noticed a lump under his ribs. He brought it to the attention of the prison medical staff and was told not to worry. When the lump grew, Mitchell was diagnosed with cancer and sent to the Federal Correction Institution in Butner, North Carolina, where very sick prisoners were kept.
Oh, no.
His last letter to Reed arrived around Christmas. It was short and nearly illegible, written on a half sheet of yellow paper. The last line of the letter read, "We've had a life, haven't we?" Yeah, so the two of them like pen palled basically that whole time he was in prison.
I kind of love them.
I know, and it's like killing me to not fill in these other stories of the rest of the stopwatch gang because there's so much more there. But
Okay,
oh my God.
We want a page.
We want a short stack. Oh, fun.
So Mitchell ended up dying on January 14th, 2007 at the age of 64. And his find a grave said he is survived by Richard, Kevin, Michael Jindrak, and 2 grandsons, Joey, 15, and Jacob, 13. So I think those were all sons that they named. I couldn't really find all of them. I know Kevin was his son for sure. And also, while Mitchell was in prison, he was writing a weekly blog. We keep coming across this. And it's still up on the internet. It's pattymitchell.wordpress.com. So Mitchell's son, Kevin, kind of like maintained the blog after he died and would still put stuff on there. News of Mitchell's death at the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina, while serving a 65-year sentence, was posted on his blog by his son, Kevin Mitchell. Quote, "This brings the end to North America's most famous, most successful, and especially most likable robber of our time," Kevin Mitchell wrote. So if you look at the blog, or if you look at any message boards about this, it's full of people that loved this guy. Like, all these people that knew him, there's, like, his old girlfriends have posted on there. Like, all these people are like, oh, my dad knew him and blah, blah, blah. Like, people loved him.
Wow. I guess he was a good guy besides the bank robbing.
Right.
Yeah. And, like...
Yeah, and originally they said that the stopwatch gang was nice to their victims.
Yeah, and I read several accounts of people saying he was. Like, there was even one where this old lady had said she was so terrified, and at one point he, like, leaned over to her and was like, listen, there are no bullets in my gun.
Oh my God. That is... See, that shows he's not a sociopath. He could tell and take in with empathy how this was making people feel.
Yeah. But then there were a lot of quotes from Reed in that long magazine article that I found, and sometimes he was like, that's bullshit. We had bullets. If we needed to use them, we would have used them. So
wow.
There were kind of differing stories there. I think for the most part, Mitchell didn't want to be involved in any kind of violence. So there are references to Patty Mitchell and the Stopwatch Gang in pop culture. He wrote his own autobiography while he was in prison called This Bank Robber's Life, The Life and Fast Times of Patrick Patty Mitchell. And he sold it while he was in prison over the internet. There's also a book about the Stopwatch Gang titled the same name, written by Greg Weston. And as mentioned, they were featured on shows like Unsolved Mysteries, America's Most Wanted. There was a song written about Patty Mitchell called On the Run, The Ballad of Patty Mitchell by this guy, David Britton.
I love it.
And I meant to look up the song, actually, forgot. As mentioned, Patty was keeping this blog. You can still go to pattymitchell.com, and it's called Patty Mitchell, a blog behind bars. Like I said, Kevin continued to update it for a while. One of his last posts was in 2015 regarding the book and how it had sold out. And he also mentions there that there were talks of a major motion picture about the Stopwatch Gang. So that was in 2015. I don't know if anything is still happening with that or did happen that I just couldn't find.
Huh.
Patty also wrote a novel while he was in prison called The Great Plane Robbery. Yeah, and like I said, all the comments on like his blog and everything are really just positive, and people are just interested in this guy's life. So
what a character.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Reed also became an author and wrote a book while in prison. So these guys were definitely like not just like
folk heroes.
Yeah.
They're kind of like folk heroes.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
They have a very interesting story. So
cool.
And Reed died in 2018. And I couldn't find I'm not sure if he's still out there or what happened to him, but
nice.
Yeah.
That was fun.
The story
that was fun. Good job.
of Patty Mitchell and the Stopwatch Gang.
Nice job, girl.
Thank you.
All right. So I have a Lost Loves segment, and this is the story of Victor Simon, and this is a Great Depression era tale. And it's quite sad, but short also. So we get some old-timey reenactments in this one, for sure. Little boy working on the farm during the Great Depression. And Stack does his voiceover about, just how hard the Great Depression was on all families in the United States, but especially farmers. And so we see Victor Simon as a little boy working on this farm. And he's also in this segment, of course, and he's explaining as an adult that he worked every day, all day. He'd get up really early. And then we see, and at this time he went by the name Frank. And then we see this woman come into the barn, and she's very mean and yelling at him and just saying, like, he doesn't do anything right. And that he's gonna sleep in the barn tonight.
She's like a monster.
She's a monster.
Major B.
She's a major B, and this poor little boy, it's just so sad, even though he's just an actor. Like, that's how it really was, and that's terrible.
I know. It got me thinking about how many children were basically just slaves back then.
Oh my gosh.
It's horrible.
Yeah. So then we learn that these are actually his adoptive parents.
Mhm.
And it's unclear if they actually ever officially adopted him, or if it was just kind of a foster family situation, but also who knows what the paperwork was like then. Like, I don't know if
Right.
anything was really legal.
Yeah.
So these parents abused and neglected him, clearly. He says he was often very, very hungry, didn't eat for days. And of course, also it's the Depression. But they kept food from him. And basically, he was just there to work. So when he was 9 years old, he was told that not only... I think he knew he was adopted, but I'm not sure. But he was told that his birth parents had abandoned him and, specifically did not want him. And that knowledge left him really depressed for many years.
Yeah.
And then his adoptive parents also eventually abandoned him and gave him up. And so then after the age of 9 or 10, he was placed in several foster homes and kind of bounced around. So just the worst.
Such a hard life.
Such a hard life. So he is then in high school and continues to suffer from depression and does really poorly in class, just doesn't try, but is depressed. One of the reenactments shows him sleeping in class, and the teacher, doesn't have any patience for that. It's obviously such a different time. They're not looking at what are these kids actually going through that might make them sleep in class.
Some teachers still don't understand that.
Oh, God, yeah. So then this social worker, though, gets involved in his life and does a little digging and realizes that tells him that his real name is not Frank, it's actually Victor Simon, and then some more comes out about that a little bit later. But this social worker says, your birth parents are still out there, and I can find them for you, and they will promise that if you graduate from high school, they promise they'll come to your graduation. And so he starts throwing himself into his schoolwork, and he starts doing really well, and it made him stay in school. And then we see old-timey graduation scene, which honestly wasn't old-timey enough for the year he would have graduated. It looked like it was the 50s.
Yeah.
And it would have been before that, for sure.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That's true.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of it now. Also, it was the smallest graduation.
Yeah, it was
I've ever
10
seen.
kids or
But,
something.
I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
And then
I was just
so then we
preparing
see-
myself for heartbreak at this point.
Oh my God, yeah. So he's waited for this day forever and ever. Graduation comes, and he says, I thought maybe when they call, he decides to graduate as Victor Simon,
Yes.
not as Frank, so that his parents would know who he was when they came, and his name was called to go across the stage. And his name gets called, and he walks across, and he gets his diploma, and his parents are not there. No one is there for him.
I hate it.
Oh my gosh. And he says in his talking head, it was the worst day of his life.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
It was
so
like,
sad.
I mean, I understand the teacher saying that to motivate him, but that was a terrible thing to do.
Motivate him and build him up for months for this extreme letdown.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, and I think it was the social worker that did that. But I mean, who knows though what his life would have been like? He probably would have dropped out of school.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, find a different way to motivate. You invest in his life instead of him having false hope about someone showing up that's not going to show up.
Yeah, totally.
Especially when he already has abandonment issues, compounded by then his adoptive parents giving him away.
Yeah.
And then
all he's ever wanted is a family to belong to.
Yeah. Really sad. Really traumatic. The trauma of these older generations.
Yeah.
I don't.
Karlin,
I do not
your
understand.
grandparents.
Both of my grandparents.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So then Victor graduates and he tries writing to several agencies and really wants to find his birth family. He's still looking for them, but was unsuccessful, and eventually he just gave up. But he manages to live a pretty normal life. He got married and had 5 children, that's the other thing, is just these people then without any model of what a family is, of what love is, able to make it on their own, which is like amazingly beautiful, because there are people who did have a good model of it who cannot get their shit together.
Yes, it's true. Totally.
So finally, in 1984, so a little bit before this segment aired, he hears about this organization called Reunite that helped reunite families, sort of like some of these organizations we've heard about before with the orphan trains and with that one terrible woman who stole the children and
Georgetown.
And so he decided to contact them and restart his search for his birth family. And an amateur genealogist named Rose Murphy heard his story, and we love these amateur genealogists.
We love them. They're amazing.
They're so nice.
So nice.
And so she gets really intrigued and wants to help. And she starts looking through old county records, and she found that his name was listed as Simon, but she surmised that and it said that they were from Hungary. And so she made this guess that actually probably his name was listed as Shiman, Shiman. But that the name was probably just Simon, but the person writing it down at immigration would have heard a Hungarian person say it with the SH sound, and so would have written it down phonetically like that.
Yes.
Which we've heard about happening at Ellis Island and all these places all the time.
And that's where all these variations on the same name come from. Sometimes it's just fucking mistakes. It's wild.
And so then, knowing that, that sheds a lot of light on possibly his family, and also makes sense in some of the searches not coming up right. Like if he's searching the SH spelling, he's not going to find what his family was actually listed as Simon.
Yeah.
So then Rose found an obituary page for who she thought was Victor's mother, and he was from an Hungarian immigrant family and had been given up for adoption in September of 1921. Apparently, his mother was Lena Simon, who was 37, and she died hours after giving birth to him. And there's a reenactment of this, and his other siblings are looking in as she's giving birth. And then what makes this so much worse is that on the day he was born, his father, who was named Dan, was a railroad worker, and he had this freak accident where he stuck his foot. He just was working on the railroad tracks, and he stuck his foot down right where the tracks change. And so then the guy at the controls pulls the lever and changes the tracks, and his foot gets stuck in there. And crushes all the bones in his ankle. Just horrible. Terrible injuries that then, there's not great health care. I mean, these are the kind of injuries that just eventually killed people because in that time.
Well, that, and there's no welfare system set up, so...
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You can't work. That's it. You're done.
Yeah. So that happened to him, his father, right before he was born, too. Then the mother dies from childbirth, and he already had several older siblings. So his father, Dan, like we've seen before, couldn't care for the baby without the mother there and with all these other kids. And so he gives up baby Victor to the foster care system. But then Rose believes that Dan, the father, later went back to the foster care and asked to have Victor returned to him, and we've seen this before. And just without the paperwork trail, there's no legality in any of this. It's just the worst system ever.
Yeah, like people are literally just lost. They're just lost.
They're exactly lost. And not only was he not there anymore, but then he was placed as Victor Shiman in the records. And so if Dan were to try to look for him, he wasn't going to be able to find him either, because the last name is written down incorrectly. So this is, obviously this was very sad news for him, but it was reassuring that his parents didn't not want him.
Yeah.
Right. That was a source of so much of his depression, and also just the last stick of cruelty of his adoptive parents.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you say that to him? It's disgusting.
And why?
Yeah, those
you
people
are
were
traumatizing
terrible.
him for no reason.
Yeah, they were terrible.
So he finds that with the help of Rose and with this organization, but then he's on the show just hoping to find more of his family, more of his Hungarian family, and of course he knows that he's got older siblings that should be in the States. So there's not a huge update for this one. I found some Sitcoms Online comments from people who are related to him, though.
Oh, cool.
So first of all, Victor passed away on May 16th, 1995 at the age of 73. And knowing that, there wasn't a ton of information, but I looked on the Sitcoms Online and I saw a posting, and it says, "Hello everyone, I came across this discussion board while searching for the full episode of my grandfather's plight to find his family.
Aww.
Yes, Victor was my grandfather. He passed away in 1995, never having met any of his family."
Oh, no.
I know. However, he was able to speak over the phone with what he believes was a distant cousin that resided in Arizona at the time. Through this contact, he believed he may have found family in Romania. And then I think this is his grandson. He says, "I remember helping him decide what to say in a letter he wrote to them. He did learn, because of the political environment of those days, they were in need of funds. From the time he learned of this until the day he died, he sent regular monthly checks in the amount of $25 to $50 to them.
Oh my God.
He was on Social Security at the time of his death, so funds were limited."
Oh my God.
What a honey.
A true honey.
Oh.
And they say, "If I learned anything from him, it was the importance of family, children, and hard work. My grandfather did not retire until late 1994, the year before he died.
Wow.
Whoa.
This was due to the company he worked for finally ending his employment because of age concerns.
Wow.
He had planned on taking a trip to Romania once he had enough money saved so that he could see the face of a relative for the first time in his life."
Oh my
gosh.
I know.
God.
This goal was never realized. To this day, I miss him.
Oh God.
Oh my gosh. Okay, and then a few people post some more things or just ask questions. And he says, "Besides the birth of my own children and later my grandchildren, the best moments of my life have been with my grandfather and grandmother. I'm hopeful that I learned enough to be the kind of grandpa to my grandchildren as he was to me."
Oh.
So nice.
I'm
It's
so
nice.
glad he got to make his own family.
Yes. And then someone else says, to this grandson, "Have you ever thought of going to Romania yourself to meet those distant relatives?" He says, "With the help of Rose, Unsolved Mysteries, and a few other organizations, the confidence level that these were relatives was somewhere in the 95 to 97% range. The verification process took quite a while. In the end, my grandfather felt for the first time in his life that he may have found people to whom he belonged. All he wanted was to be held one time and told, 'Victor, you belong to us.' He came so close.
Oh,
Personally, I have thought about trying to finish my grandfather's quest. if the time comes, that allowed my wife and I to be able to afford the trip and have the time off work without losing our jobs, I would finish his journey. I'm hopeful this will happen in my lifetime.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
just the last part of that. A little known fact, when this all started, my grandfather celebrated his birthday September 5th of every year his whole life. But he finally learned that his birthday was actually September 4th.
Whoa.
So it's not known why he was told September 5th or by whom, if that was just a guess that happened to be really close. But
Wow.
and then he made sure, when my grandfather passed away, he made sure to not change his name from Shiman. This is the name he had his entire life and the name by which he had created his own family. He also never changed celebrating his birthday from September 5th. He said it gave him an extra day to stay at his current age at the time.
Oh, that's adorable.
It's so cute.
Oh my
gosh.
God, he is
I love
the
him.
sweetest.
I
Yeah.
know, we love him. And then, yeah, from what I could find, it seemed like he learned that his siblings had passed away. I think the oldest one was George, and he passed away in like 1967. So
Wow.
he wasn't able to find or meet any of the siblings. Yeah, his sister Emma passed away in 1987. So close.
Oh man.
So close. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. So that is the story of, I guess, really Victor Shiman.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
What
I
a
know.
heartbreaker.
These last loves, they really get us.
Oh my
Seriously.
This is a wanted segment, and it is the story of Joe Smith. So Stack begins by telling us that in the last decade, Las Vegas, Nevada has begun to attract a large retirement community. Frank Allen, a Los Angeles businessman, bought his dream retirement home in 1986. I have photos of the actual house from Zillow, and it's actually very big. So I always thought people downsized when they retired, but Frank went big. He got himself a mansion. So the home was located in an elegant gated community 10 miles from downtown Vegas. Frank decided to rent the house to a family, but he maintained a room as well because he took frequent business trips to Nevada. But Stack says Frank Allen had no idea that Joe Smith, the man he was renting his house to, had an unsavory past. Joe Weldon Smith called himself a real estate investor. He had a long history as a con man and had once been convicted of attempted grand theft. Joe lived in Frank Allen's house with his wife Judith and her two daughters from a previous marriage, 12-year-old Christy and 20-year-old Wendy. I also read later that she had a couple of other children, and I saw that one of her sons commented on a message board at some point that he was living at the house at the time too, but he wasn't home that night. So on October 6th, 1990, Frank Allen expected to have the house to himself. Joe Smith had said that he and his family would be out of town for a few days. Stack says that instead of a restful weekend, Allen had stepped into a nightmare. Frank Allen is interviewed, and he says that he locked the front door behind him when he got home, and he went up to the top of the steps to unlock the bedroom and then went in. So when he says that he locked the front door behind him when he came in, there were two deadbolt locks on the door that required a key to lock and unlock them to get in and out, to get out of the house, which I think is really strange.
Yeah.
So Frank Allen locks the door and then goes up to the top of the steps to unlock his bedroom door. He walks into the bedroom and he begins to undress. He's taking off his tie and his shirt. And then he says that he stopped and said something to himself, something is wrong. He says in the interview that he didn't know what it was, but that something felt wrong. So the reenactment shows Frank walking down a hallway, and all of a sudden, a man, presumably Joe Smith, jumps out of a closet and starts attacking Frank. So Frank says that he grabbed Joe at the wrist on his right arm and shook him and said, "Joe, what in the hell are you trying to do?" Frank says that it was then clear to him that Joe was trying to murder him. In the reenactment, Frank pushes Joe away and runs down the hall, and Joe runs after him. Joe has a hammer in his hand and is trying to hit Frank with it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Frank says that as he was running down the steps to the front door, he realized that he had locked the 2 deadbolt locks. And again, like, I think it's so weird to have deadbolts on the inside. I know that I've seen that for some reason traveling in Europe. I feel like I've seen that, but I didn't look up why people would do that. Like,
yeah.
what if there's a fire?
Totally.
Yeah,
How do you get out?
Any kind of
to have that
emergency.
key? Why would you need to have a key?
Yeah, it's so strange. So Frank realizes that since the door is double deadbolted and he doesn't have the time to reach for his keys, you know, that Joe is going to catch up to him. So Frank runs through the foyer and Joe tries to head him off through the kitchen. So I guess it's like one of those things where it's like doorways that are connected.
Yeah.
So Joe runs to head him off in the kitchen, but then Frank doubles back to the front door and literally jumps through the glass in the front door. He just like careens through it,
Yeah.
like plate glass. He then jumps into his car and then drives to the guard gate and tells the guard to call the police because, quote, there's a man in his house trying to kill him. So Stack says 10 minutes later, the local police arrived at Frank's house expecting to find Joe Smith inside. They thought they had cornered Joe hiding under a blanket in a first floor bedroom. But so they walk into the room and they're like, come on, Joe, you know, give it up and yada, yada. But they pull back the blanket and they find 12-year-old Christy Cox. She had been strangled and bludgeoned to death.
No.
So Detective John Williams of the Henderson, Nevada Police Department says it was obvious that Christy had been dead for quite some time. He says that she had several wounds to her face and her head. Next, the police found 20-year-old Wendy Cox dead in another bedroom. She had approximately 32 wounds to her head and hands. And she had also been strangled, so she fought for her life.
Yeah.
In the master bedroom, they found Judith Smith. She had been bludgeoned to death, and the 3 women had been dead for approximately 18 hours. So we'll get to this, but he was in the house with these bodies the entire time.
Oh my God. Ew.
Yeah.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's super, super messed up. So on October 6th, at around 4:30 in the morning, Joe Smith called his wife's daughter-in-law, so Judith's son's wife. And I think that was the son that was living with them at the time. So I think maybe they were estranged or separated. Smith told the daughter-in-law that Judith, Wendy, and Christy had been murdered, but that he had killed one of the men who did it, and that he knew who the other people involved were. Detective Williams says it was a ruse to get Judith Smith's family on his side and make it seem like he wasn't involved in the killings. Although, what the hell? Like, what a story. So Joe Smith fled in a gold Lincoln Continental with Nevada vanity plates that said Smitty 2. Stack says he is wanted on 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder with a deadly weapon. Stack then gives physical stats and says that the police are still puzzled by what seems to have been a motiveless crime. Stack says that by all accounts, the marriage was a happy one, and although Joe Smith was in dire financial straits, he wasn't named in his wife's insurance policy, and Wendy and Christy didn't have any insurance policies. But I think we've established with our last episode with Brad Bishop that financial issues are exactly the reason to kill your family if you're a family annihilator. I think that's a good enough reason for Joe Smith.
Yeah.
So the show provides an update. Stack says that just minutes after the case was profiled, an anonymous viewer called to report that Smith was living near Los Angeles, California. Smith was hiding out in a motel but managed to escape before he could be apprehended. Detective E. Edwards of the LAPD says that after they learned that Joe Smith was in the LA area, they began to surveil his brother who lived in the area. After 5 days of surveillance, they were able to establish where Joe Smith was living. He was arrested at another hotel. Inside Smith's room, detectives recovered several credit and ID cards, and he was in the process of creating a new identity. At the time of his arrest, Joe Smith told Detective Edwards that he had seen the last airing of UM, and he also said it was very tough being a fugitive, and he was glad it was all over.
Yeah.
Joe Smith was convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder. So Joe Smith murdered his wife and stepdaughters on October 6th, 1990. This case aired on January 23rd, 1991, and he was arrested on April 22nd, 1991.
Oh.
This segment aired just 12 weeks after the actual crime, and then he was
Wow.
caught a couple months later.
Wow,
It went very quickly. The reenactment was filmed in the actual home, and someone on Sitcoms Online went through shot for shot of the inside of the house and then found the correlating Zillow image
Oh my gosh.
because the internet is magic.
Yep.
So I have some screen grabs from that. As we saw, Joe Smith was apprehended, tried, and convicted of 3 counts of murder. And I just have some additional information. A Sitcom Online user called DinoGuy88 provided some additional information about Smith and the night in question. So Smith and the family had lived in that house for just a few weeks when he killed his family. Frank Allen originally hadn't planned to sell the house, but Smith offered him $50,000 over the appraised value. So Frank Allen agreed to sell him the home. Both agreed that Frank Allen could retain a bedroom for himself for his business trips. So they were renting the place, but I think there was a plan to purchase the home.
Okay.
Not surprisingly, both of the checks that Smith wrote to Allen for a good faith deposit and the October mortgage payment were on accounts that were already closed. So Joe Smith told Frank Allen that he would straighten this out and he would have good checks waiting for him when Allen arrived in Nevada on October 5th, which ended up being the day that Smith tried to kill him. Wendy Cox was scheduled to get married a month after the murder. In fact, one of the reasons Smith had originally told Frank Allen he was in a rush to move into the house was because he wanted to make preparations for Wendy's wedding in November. So Smith bludgeoned and strangled Judy, Wendy, and Christy as they slept on October 5th. And then just a few hours after killing them and the sun rose, Smith called Frank Allen and told him, quote, "I thought you were coming up here this morning." Allen told him that he wouldn't be arriving until later in the day. At that point, Smith said that he and the family would be driving to California to go furniture shopping and that he would leave the 2 checks on the wet bar with Frank Allen's mail.
Oh my God.
So Frank Allen didn't end up arriving until about 1:30 in the morning, so that would be October 6th. And he said the first thing he noticed was that the security system to the house was turned off, which is why he maybe had such a bad feeling that something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Allen spotted Smith crouching in the closet with a hammer before he jumped out and started attacking him. His escape was exactly what we saw in the reenactment. He ended up reaching the guardhouse and yelling for the security guard, quote, "He's after me, he's after me." While on the phone with police, the guard turned to his right and saw Smith's Lincoln exiting the gated community with Smith behind the wheel. Authorities tracked Smith by following his brother Harold, who was 52 at the time. He lived in Inglewood, California, and he was also arrested on suspicion of aiding his brother's flight. After the officers found the bodies, they also located some notes written by Smith. The first, found inside a briefcase in the upstairs den and dated October 5th, 1990, read, quote, "A triple murder was committed here this morning. My wife, Judith Smith, and my 2 stepdaughters, Wendy Cox and Christy Cox, were assassinated. I know who did it. I know who sent them. I had been warned that this would happen if I did not pay a large sum of money to certain people. I have been owing it for a long time and simply could not come up with it. And I didn't believe the threat. I don't need any help from the police in this matter. I will take care of it myself. They will have to kill me too. When and if you find me, I'm sure I will be dead, but that's okay. I already killed one of the murderers, and I'm going to get the others and the man who I know sent them. There were 3 in all. You will probably find my body within a day or 2. Thank you, Joe Smith."
Okay.
Oh my God.
P.S. I thought I had gotten away when we moved here, but it didn't work. When we moved, we were being watched. If I am successful in my task at hand, I will turn myself into the police. So,
What the fuck?
I mean, just a far... And he, fully commits to this crazy far-fetched story. The second letter stated, "Frank Allen, look in the locked room upstairs for your package. The key is on the wet bar. Joe." So he wanted him to go upstairs so he could jump out of the closet, but Frank didn't see the note.
Wow.
So some additional information about the trial. Judith's daughter-in-law who received the phone call from Smith is called Yolanda. Yolanda testified that on Saturday, October 6th, 1990, at approximately 5 a.m., Smith called her and told her of the 3 murders. He told her that Frank Allen came into the house and bludgeoned them to death. Smith requested that she tell all of Judith's other children to go to the house and get the letter out of his briefcase explaining what happened. He then told her that he was going to kill himself and hung up on her. William Lawrence Cook, one of Judith's sons, testified that Smith had expressed concern and irritation over financial obligations, such as Wendy's pending wedding and the new house. William testified that Smith would often refer to himself as, quote, the lone wolf, and say things like, quote, I gotta get out of here. Sometimes Smith would say that he wanted to just go away and live on an island somewhere, quote, around no kind of family or nothing like that.
Oh my God.
William also remembers Smith telling him, quote, the worst thing to fuck up a man was to have a family.
Oh my God.
Smith made these statements during a collection of conversations over a period of years. Like most idiots, Smith took the stand on his own behalf and testified. I know.
Dumb.
I know. It's like, keep digging that grave, baby. Keep going.
Seriously.
Smith testified that in 1986, he encountered financial difficulties and agreed to accept a drug dealing opportunity in Los Angeles with an organization. That same year, Smith moved to Las Vegas and continued working for the organization. At some point, the organization falsely accused Smith of stealing cocaine and told Smith that he now owed the organization a big debt. Smith claims he quit working for the organization, and in 1989, Gino, a man from the organization, found Smith and reminded him of the debt, saying that, quote, it had to be paid or else they were going to give him a fate worse than death. Smith claims that he resumed working for the organization and also began to look for a new house in a gated community. He found the house at the Fountains, which is the gated community, and arranged payment terms with Frank Allen, which he claims included giving Allen 11 kilograms of cocaine in exchange for the equity in the house.
Oh my God.
The 11 kilograms were part of a 20-kilogram shipment, which Smith had received from the organization and had decided to keep for himself. Smith claimed that he gave Allen 10 kilograms of cocaine, worth approximately $200,000, on the same day that he gave Allen the $35,000 check. He claimed that Allen knew the check was no good and served only to make the transaction seem legitimate, and said that he would not deposit it. On Thursday, October 4th, 1990, Smith claimed that he left the additional kilogram of cocaine owed to Allen in Allen's bathroom sink, which is obviously where you leave a brick of cocaine where it can get nice and wet. So he left it in the bathroom sink upstairs where Allen stayed where he was in town for the weekends. That same day, Smith told the organization that he had sold 20 kilograms of cocaine and was keeping the money, quote, because he was tired of working for peanuts. That's the way drug organizations work. You just keep their drugs and complain about what they pay you, and they're completely fine with it.
Yeah, it's totally cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. on the morning of Friday, October 5th, while he was in bed with Judith, Joe Smith said he was awakened by a tap on his toe. He says he then saw 3 men standing over his bed, one of whom picked up a hammer Smith had been using the previous night and was by his bedside, and began slapping it in his hand, asking Smith where the, quote, stuff was. Another man, who had a sawed-off shotgun, forced Smith to go into the game room and made him lay down and stay there. Smith subsequently discovered that his family had been killed. On Friday, after the murders, Smith said that he remembered receiving 3 phone calls from Yolanda. He stated, quote, I brushed her off like I had other things to do, a meeting I had to attend. I really needed time to sort this out. There were too many loose ends that I didn't have answers to. Smith stated that he did not go to the police because he would have to tell them about the drugs, and because it looked like he committed the crime himself, and he knew that they would probably put him in jail.
Yes,
Oh my-
it does look like that. You're right.
Yes, it
A
very
little
much
bit.
looks like that.
Just a bit, yeah. He stated that he was also trying to figure out if Allen might have been involved in the murders and might have provided the killers with keys to the house. That's why he called Allen that Friday morning to see if he could find out from Allen's voice if Allen was involved in the murders. After the phone call, however, he decided that Frank Allen was probably not involved. Even though he then told Yolanda that Frank Allen was involved.
Yeah.
He's just a mess.
Get your story straight, bud.
Seriously. So at approximately 4 p.m. on Friday, Smith took some sleeping pills. This is still his story. And lay down on the game floor by the closet. Early Saturday morning, he awoke to the sounds of someone coming into the game room. Smith claimed that he thought it was the killers and that they had returned and began swinging the hammer at a man. He claimed he didn't know it was Frank Allen because it was dark.
Oh, my God.
And Allen didn't say anything during the attack.
Oh.
Just silent.
Yeah.
He's like,
you being attacked and you're not going to be like, dude, it's me.
yeah, totally. And in the reenactment, Frank said, he was like, Joe, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So Smith was charged with 3 counts of murder with use of a deadly weapon and 1 count of attempted murder with use of a deadly weapon. He was convicted on all 4 counts and sentenced to death for the murders of Christy and Wendy and life without the possibility of parole for Judith's murder, and then 2 consecutive 20-year terms for the attempted murder of Allen with the use of a deadly weapon. In 1994, the Nevada Supreme Court affirmed the convictions but vacated the deadly weapon enhancement. The state Supreme Court also vacated the death sentences and remanded for a new punishment trial. On April 18, 1996, a jury again sentenced Smith to death for the murders of Wendy and Christy Cox. On appeal, the Nevada Supreme Court vacated the death sentence as to the murder of Christy, replacing it with a life sentence without the possibility of parole, but affirmed the death sentence for the murder of Wendy. He keeps trying to have it overturned. In 1998, the Supreme Court denied Smith's petition for a rehearing. Again, in 1998, Smith was sentenced by the lower court. So the death penalty still stands for the murder of Wendy Cox. And he's in prison in Nevada. I have a recent photo of him. And they say, you know, a lot of the things I read in these articles is that no one ever received a satisfactory answer as to why Joe Smith murdered his entire family. But I think in his mind, he was complaining to his stepson about having to pay for the wedding and having to pay for this house. And he just wanted to be a lone wolf and whatever. His fantasy. I mean, he clearly has a very active fantasy life, right?
Yeah.
Like, to come up with this whole
So
organization. And I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, so that's it. He's still in prison. He's not getting out. I don't know if Nevada's currently executing death row prisoners or if there's been like a stay, but he's not going anywhere.
No. Wow. He just didn't want a family anymore. So.
Yeah. And why leave, right?
Right.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah, so we have 2 episodes in a row with family annihilators
Yeah,
for
what
financial
the
reasons.
hell?
Yeah, it's wild. It's really strange.
Horrible. And this guy really didn't have it planned out.
No. I don't know what the trigger event was for him. You know, he went like berserk.
Yeah. Ugh. Oh my God.
I know.
I hate it. Good job.
Good job. You made me hate another person.
Good job. We hate him. Bye.
Good job. We hate him. Bye.
Okay, y'all, you ready for a ghosty?
Oh,
yeah.
We've needed
been a bit.
ghosty. We've needed it.
It's been a while. So this is the story of the Kelsay House. Stack tells us that this story takes place in Fish Springs, Nevada, at a 120-year-old Kansas-style farmhouse. The house was originally built next to a graveyard in Virginia City, but has been moved 3 times, which is wild to me. I didn't realize that, homes that weren't modular homes got moved.
Yeah, that is weird.
Especially 3 times. Steve Robinson is interviewed. We don't really know who he is yet, but he says, "I'd like to see it burnt to the ground."
Oh, my.
Mm-hmm. Susan Kelsay says that she's always been fascinated with old homes, and she feels that they have a history. And just like people, they have a memory of what's happened there. Stack tells us that this is the story of 2 families, the Kelsays and the Robinsons. The Kelsay family bought the house on May 2nd, 1978, 100 years to the day after the man who built it had died. From the beginning, there was something eerie about the house. Susan says she wouldn't even walk through the house in the dark because she was afraid of running into something that wasn't supposed to be there. She says that just as they were going to bed, they would often hear footsteps going up and down the stairs and a swishing sound, quote, like the old chiffon skirts they used to wear, was how the husband described it.
Okay, no.
I know. I was like, you don't know what that sounds like.
No, and that is so specific. And yeah, the husband describes it that way.
Honey, I looked up when chiffon was invented, and this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. So she says that they just kind of chalked it up to seeing too many scary movies and the fact that it was an old house. But the Kelsey's 4-year-old daughter had an even weirder experience in the house. Jennifer Kelsay, who in the interview she's giving UM is like 18, but she was 4 at the time, says she just woke up for some reason. She rolled over and looked toward her bedroom door. Quote, and I just saw this little boy. He looked like he was sad, and the man, he just looked like he was really concerned. She says they were only there for a few seconds and then they disappeared. She says the way they were looking at her was like they knew her. And Jennifer shares another memory that she has, but she says she wasn't sure if it was the same night or if she just combined them in her memory. Again, she was 4.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything from when I was 4.
No.
But she also had an experience where it seemed like her whole entire bed was levitating while she was laying in it.
Which
And I will say,
I have
the
had that
reenactments in this one,
Yeah.
kind of good.
It is good. Oh, yeah. How do you make someone levitate? That's true.
I mean, this one was just like, I don't know, I feel like the production quality overall made the whole segment actually scary.
Yeah.
As opposed to some of our previous ghosty ones with like,
That are funny.
like that floating head and stuff where it was just like, really,
But
this one was pretty good.
I have had that sensation before of floating. It's
Really?
like a certain place in your mind you can be, I feel like, where you feel like you're just floating or flying, sort of.
Yeah, so they do that whole reenactment of her floating in her bed, which is kind of scary. Susan says she started to get worried that things were happening that shouldn't be happening. She told her husband about Jennifer's account, and he asked if she was actually levitated. And she says, from her account of it, that's what it sounded like. Again, she is 4.
She's 4.
Like, if you guys both have 4-year-olds, if they told you this happened, how would you react?
I would be like, go back to
I feel
sleep.
like you were dreaming, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, you know, who can tell the difference between a dream and real life when you're 4? So Jim and Susan would often hear strange footsteps approaching their daughter's bedroom, and they started to get concerned for her safety. So they did what any normal American family in a haunted house would do, and they called in a psychic.
Of course. What else are you going to do?
He was a local man named Daniel Martin, which later on I will find out is Susan's coworker's husband.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, that wife
So-
is like, oh, honey, I can help you out. My husband.
Exactly. So Stack says that after visiting the house, Martin returned to his home and put himself in a trance. Martin said that while in the trance, he met the Kelsay family's ghost. Quote, I contacted an entity, appeared to me as a sailing man. That's what came to my mind. He had the mustache. You always know a sailing man by that mustache.
And
honey.
you always call him a sailing man.
Yes, not a sailor, but a sailing man. Quote, and at the time I asked him, who are you? And he told me his name was Samuel. And he told me at the time his purpose there was to protect the child. He was there not to harm anybody. When I explained to him that he was frightening the family, Samuel promised not to do these things in the future, not to frighten them by doing frightening things to them. Jennifer asks her mom if the ghost would now go away. She said that a couple weeks later, things had quieted down, and she asked her mom if the ghost had moved away. Susan said she didn't know, and Jennifer said she didn't think he did move away. She thought he was up in the attic.
Ugh.
Which is scary for a 4-year-old to be saying.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
creepy.
But the Kelseys became convinced Samuel meant no harm to them. 3 years later, the Kelseys moved to a more modern house nearby. The home was leased to a potential buyer. By this time, the Kelseys had 3 kids, including an infant son. One day, Susan was taking photos of her baby, his name was Scotty, and she had run out of flash, but she kept taking pictures anyway using the light from a nearby lamp. When Susan got the photos back, which that scene was so nostalgic, like opening that little envelope of photos. Oh my God, honey, I miss those days. So she opens them up and she's super confused because the very first photo she sees is the face of a man she doesn't recognize. So she thought they weren't her photos. She keeps flipping, but everything else in the envelope was pictures of her family. They were her family photos. So my mind immediately was like, someone's photo got mixed in your envelope, lady.
Exactly, because it doesn't look like a ghosty guy. It just looks like a man's face.
Yeah, it looks like an extreme close-up of a man.
Yeah, portrait.
Yeah. And I was like, girl, somebody else's photo is in your envelope. But no, Susan checked her negative strip and the man was on there too. So I was like, ooh.
True.
Susan says she can only rationalize that this was a photo of their ghost Samuel.
That's the only answer. It's Samuel the Seaman.
The only...
Samuel the Seaman, that's it.
Her daughter had told her 3 weeks earlier that she felt Samuel had moved with them. Susan says she didn't believe her until she saw the photos and knew that must have been Samuel's way of letting them know he had, in fact, moved with them. Quote, that's the only explanation there was. The photo and the Kelsey's story became front-page news in Fish Springs. They show pictures of the newspaper, photo of Samuel front and center.
Oh, my God. How embarrassing for the Fish Springs.
Really, truly. But nobody in town recognized the man in the picture. So UM brought in a photographic expert named Vernon Miller to analyze the photo, which really just made me mad that we didn't bring in a photo expert for Dorothy Isa. Like, where was this guy before?
Oh, yeah.
Come on, guys. So Vernon, who is a photo expert at the Brooks Institute, comes on, and he says there isn't enough evidence to determine how the photograph was formed. He says the image is 3D and shows highlights on the skin of the man's face from reflection of light. He says a manifestation of a ghost is usually thought of as a transparent or self-illuminant, and this is definitely reflected light. So he's like, based on people saying that ghosts are see-through, I don't think this is a ghost. But then he says, I detected horizontal lines across the image. In conclusion, I would say that Samuel's ghost was made off of a large television screen. And I was like, oh, damn, Vernon with the evidence.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Then our favorite UM editing technique, dueling interviews, cut immediately to Susan Kelsay saying, the picture of Samuel is not fake. There is a lot of things that can't be explained, and I just think this is one of them. I know I can't explain how somebody came out in my picture that wasn't there when I snapped it. Except Vernon Miller just explained it to you, girl.
I know that I can't explain it, but...
He just told you. Like, I'm not saying she wasn't haunted or even that Samuel isn't real, but we know that this photo was accidentally taken of the TV. Like,
yeah, and she
know that this photo is the TV.
Or not accidentally. She did it on purpose.
Yeah. So like, I'm thinking she either did it on purpose and is fully invested in this, or she's got a 4-year-old.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we can all be sure that that is not an image of a ghost. Yeah. So many realistic options here.
Yes. Stack says that the Kelseys insist they have never photographed their television screen. And again, I was just like, Susan, nobody's saying you did it on purpose,
We would never, ever.
It is so easy to have this accidentally happen. And also, she mentions that the photo was, like, mixed in with, like, photos that were just black, which to me is, like, someone's accidentally snapping photos while it's in the bag or something like that. You pull it out for a moment. It takes a picture of the screen. You put it back in. Whatever.
Your kid is dinking around with it and has their finger in front of the thing, and that's why it's black until it takes a picture, blah, blah.
Yes.
So many reasons besides a haunting.
What about the people who moved into the Fish Springs house after the Kelseys? For 15 months, nothing out of the ordinary happened. But in October of 1989, the house was rented to another family. Steve and Mona Robinson knew nothing about the house's ghostly past, but soon the Robinson family was caught up in the middle of its very own ghost story. The wife says that she thought at first there might be ghosts in the house, but she kept telling herself no. But things started happening more and more. Quote, the footsteps, the bangs. Mona says that sometimes she'd bring it up to Steve and he'd say, no, it's an old house. She says they thought of all kinds of things in an old house that could be making noises, pipes, etc. Steve says the Robinsons became really concerned when their 11-year-old son Garrett began to have frightening experiences. So Garrett does an interview, and he says that he would hear, quote, noises upstairs like it was walking, bangings and stuff. And again, the reenactments of this would be so scary to watch if you were a kid.
Yeah, this
episode was well done.
Yeah.
Garrett says that even though he was super scared, he went to the top of the stairs by himself. He says once he was upstairs, there was a whole bunch of walking around and bangs that he heard. Then he started hearing the humming of 3 different voices.
Ew.
And I was like, that's a big no. I would be gone. I would be running.
Yeah, but were they in harmony?
I was going to say, were they harmonized?
If they
Even
were harmonized,
scarier,
I'm
if
okay
not.
with that.
I would have just like jumped in, you know?
Oh, yeah.
A little acapella.
Uh-huh.
And they do, the reenactment of that is also scary. So, unlike in most scary movies, he runs out of the house, so he's a smart kid. He says he got out onto the driveway, and then there was a ton of banging at the screen door. And then, the scariest part of this reenactment, he looks over to the window, quote, and I saw this old guy, and he had this grin on his face. A smirky grin, not like a real mean one, like he was trying to be mean. But the reenactment is so scary. I rewound it 3 times and watched it over again. It is scary.
Oh, and can you imagine as a kid? No, thank you.
Oh my God, no. So after this, 6-year-old Miles Robinson tells us what happened to him, and this is over a reenactment again of it happening. Quote, I remember on one night I was getting lifted out of bed. But this time it's like just his body being lifted. It's not the whole bed.
Mm-hmm.
He says, got lifted up pretty high. And I didn't know what was happening. I just got lifted up.
The kids are cute in this.
Yeah.
They were cute. So Mona starts telling her husband that she doesn't want to live there anymore. But like Mr. Robinson is just like burnt out on this whole moving process. So he's like, they're not going to hurt us. Like, he'd rather live with the ghosts than have to deal with moving again.
That's how I would be. I hate moving.
So Mona is just talking about how her husband really wasn't afraid. So then we have a scene where Mona and Steve are trying to sleep, but she keeps hearing noises banging around on the steps. Quote, then all of a sudden I heard right behind my head in a man's voice, call me a bitch.
Oh.
It was a bad voice, mad, angry.
Oh, God, I didn't remember
Ghosts are
that.
salty.
I don't remember that either.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
I had to rewind it the second time, but yeah, she says that it called her a bitch.
Damn.
So Steve Robinson and his giant mustache are smiling at the cameras, and he says, I thought, she was going nuts. But at the same time, I believed her. So he's saying, like, he believed that she was actually seeing things, but it's because she was going nuts.
God.
He's like, she kind of is a bitch. I don't know.
He's not wrong.
So Steve says that Mona was so afraid of the noises happening once they got in bed, she just wouldn't come to bed. She'd stay up all night long. Mona says if anyone told her they experienced what happened to her, she wouldn't believe them. I do believe now because we had it happen to us. You never believe anything like that until it happens to you. And she's like pissed while she's saying it to the interview too. She's like very still afraid of this. Stack says that January 31st, 1990, the Robinsons moved out of the house and not even 4 months after moving in. And that's the part for me that like makes me believe something weird's going on in that house a little bit. Like if you're going to move out that close to moving in, something is really scaring you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of noted with this one that, like, this is so different from some of our past ones, like with Dorothy Izat, like her being the only one to have these accounts. This one is multiple people in 2 different families saying that weird shit happened.
It's true. It's true.
So it has a lot more weight behind it.
Yeah.
So the Kelsays, the first family, still owned the house. So they called in psychic Daniel Martin again. So in classic Daniel Martin fashion, he goes home again and puts himself in a trance because that's how he deals with these ghosties. And he says that he meets the ghosts again. So he says this time he didn't meet Samuel. This time it was 3 ghosts, 2 men, and a she-ghost. He says his first impression was that the ghosts were of the Virginia City era back in the old days. He says that the entities weren't destructive, just cantankerous, kind of a rowdy little gang of troublemakers.
Oh, wow. That's us when we die. Cantankerous. Rowdy little
Cantankerous. Troublemakers.
We'll be making trouble.
We'll be the rowdy little stopwatch gang of the afterlife.
I also noted that the she-ghost looked like Lady Gaga, so that was kind of fun.
Also
Oh, that's
dream.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Martin asked the ghosts to leave the house, but it was too late, and the Robinsons had already moved far away from any poltergeists. Stack wraps by telling us that the Kelsays and Robinsons take this very seriously. Quote, "It is interesting to note that last year the Kelsays sold the house to a couple with 2 children who bought with full knowledge of the stories of spirits and haunting." Which, like, I'm dying to know how that was explained to them.
Yeah.
Like, was it in the real estate listing? Like, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1 ghost bungalow. Like, how did they know? How would you guys feel if you were buying a house and someone told you it was haunted?
Allie would
If it was
do
under... If it was under market value, I would be like, I don't give a fuck. Nope. You know it's got to be under market value if everybody in that little town knows that it's haunted. It was front page news. Nobody wants that.
That's true. You're going to get a good deal on that house.
Give me a good deal. I don't care. I would live in like a house where a bunch of people were murdered. I don't give a fuck.
my
I have no
God.
shame.
I wouldn't because I'm too scared. But
Spend any time renting in the 5 boroughs of New York City and you get real cutthroat. You don't give a shit.
Someone has definitely died anywhere you've lived there. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
true.
you've definitely lived with many ghosties before. Stack says, the new owners have been in the house 8 months and have reported no unusual phenomena. Perhaps ghosts, like many other things, exist only in the eyes of the beholder. Perhaps.
Oh, I loved that little perhaps at the end. Such a spook Stack.
So,
Wow.
research. So, most of the info available around is from Dionysia Kelsay, which is one of the daughters of the couple.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, her name is listed on some things as Dionysius, but it's Dionysia, so I'm not sure why that's happening. But she said that the structure was built in 1877 in Carson City and moved to Fish Springs in the late 1920s to the property of a grandfather's homestead. So they basically put the property on, or put the house on a property they already owned.
It's
her
so
mother-
weird to move a house.
Yes. So her mother, Susie Kelsay, who we know from the segment, saved the house from being demolished in 1977 on the 100th anniversary of its construction. So I was like, okay.
Because I've heard of that for
makes sense.
historical homes. Okay.
Yes.
So then a
that
bunch of
came
people
together.
probably did die in that house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That old.
Yeah.
Yeah. This location is included in the National Directory of Haunted Houses by Dennis William Hawke. As I said, Dionysia is kind of the only one. She also goes by Denny. Is also, like, she's the only one talking about this really still. I believe she's the oldest daughter in the Kelsay family. So Jennifer, the one that was 4 in the story, she's saying she was 3 at the time, and she's saying she was 7. But she's
Okay.
not interviewed on UM, so we don't meet her then.
Okay.
Dionysia still has the legendary photo of Samuel and has said, "I'm still in possession of the negative taken from my mom's Kodak 110 camera. She was taking pictures in the living room of my newborn brother Scotty with stuffed animals. The negative strip's first photo was black, the second black, the third with the face of Samuel, and the fourth was black. The negative could not be proved or unproved as fake. The picture was taken in 1982. So then I found a comment from Dionysia on Fandom's Talk forum. And she said, "Hi, I'm Dionysia Kelsay, daughter of Jim and Susie Kelsay. There is a lot of information that is incorrect in the story that I can clarify. By the way, Samuel followed us to California, and he still lets us know he's around.
Oh.
He doesn't make us feel threatened, just making his presence known. As of this writing, we are in New Orleans, and last night we went to a history ghost tour of the French Quarter. When my husband talked about my family's ghost story, the ghost detector they provided us went off in his shirt pocket."
What?
Oh, God.
Oh my God.
She also clarifies a couple things that I think Fandom had originally written differently.
Mm-hmm.
So they had put in there like an update date. And part of that was that she said Garrett, the little boy of the Robinson family, was not terrorized by Samuel. His ghost had white hair and a cape. And then she clarifies, too, that the only, like, real people in the segment were her parents, Susie and Jim. Everybody else was actors. So Jim and Susie Kelsay eventually sold the house in 1992. One final tidbit. Susan Kelsay, the mom from the segment, currently lives in Oregon.
Oh.
So I was like, maybe we need to reach out. But we definitely don't need to reach out because someone has already interviewed her for us. And it's another UM podcast. The show Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries, which is hosted by a couple guys, did a series called The Interviews, and one of their hosts, Josh, interviewed Susan 3 years ago.
Oh, cool.
So I will link to the interview in our show notes. You guys.
Oh, no.
It is over an hour.
Oh, my God.
And it is pretty much just Susan rambling.
Oh, no.
Like, Josh sneaks in a few questions, like literally a handful of questions, but the rest of it is her talking for that over an hour.
My God.
About the ghost?
About so many things, honey. So she has a lot to say.
Cringe.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Oh, my gosh. Allison, that's your nightmare.
That's like what happens when I die and go to hell.
Yes.
Honey, basically, Susan did tell Josh more details of their hauntings at the house. One anecdote I thought was kind of funny was at one point, they had moved out of the house, they had rented it to some people, and then shortly later they moved back in. The next morning, after they moved in, both their electric and wind-up alarm clocks stopped at the exact same time. Susan says she knew this was Samuel welcoming them back home. After Susan's coworker's husband had told them that Samuel was there to protect the children, Susan decided he was just part of the family. So she blew up the photo of Samuel to size 5x7 and framed it and hung it on the wall right in with the photos of her kids. She says that after that, everything remained calm.
Oh, Samuel just wanted a family of his own.
So some other things that Susan said, she told us that she's been told that ghosts can't move with you unless you invite them. So when they went to move out of the house to move to California, as she was doing like her final walkthrough of the house, she decided, quote, I invited Samuel to move to California with us. She claims that after that, every single member of their family saw Samuel in different locations they lived in throughout their lives. She told Josh about several strange occurrences where Samuel made his presence known to her kids, even in adulthood, and it would often be like in congruence with like the birth of a new child. They would have like this weird thing, and so they'd be like, that's Samuel saying that he's going to look over this baby as well. And Josh is just like listening to her as all this goes. At one point, he asks her if anything about the way UM did this segment was different than what actually happened. She said no, despite how Denny Kelsay had said a lot of it was incorrect. Mm-hmm. She says no, but there was one thing that she was disappointed about with the show. She says, quote, they left out a piece of information that made it look like we might just be kind of Looney Tunes or something. And she refers to the part where the guy had said the photo of Samuel was from a TV screen. She says that the guy worked in special effects, which is not how UM explained it. They said he was just like an expert in photography. Mm-hmm. She says that in the guy's original interview, UM had asked him if he could recreate the photo or recreate a photo like this. And he explains that he could and just how he could do it, involving a large screen TV, some ability to freeze frame, and a camera. She explains his interview was done in 1990 and the picture was taken in 1982, and that he had said the problem with that theory is that in 1982 the technology didn't exist to make this happen. So she claims that all of that was left out of UM in the final edit. At one point, Josh asks her, did you get to meet Robert Stack? She says no, they had asked about it, but they were told no, that all his filming would be done separate in Burbank.
Aww.
She goes on to tell Josh, but, however, they did get to meet one of the backup dancers from Grease, too.
Oh. Okay.
All in all, she says their filming experience was really fun. Aww. She also says their segment was chosen to be on UM's 100th episode. So they did like a special where they brought back some of the big segments that people really liked.
Oh, that's great.
She also tells Josh that Samuel continues to prove that he's there with their family. And most of the members of their family have gone back at some point to visit the house and like take pictures and stuff as early as 2011. According to Dionysia, the house was a private residence in 2011. Today, the property is owned by a casino. According to what I can find, the house does still stand, but it's been abandoned for years. Everybody on the internet is like trying to find the actual house, like find it on Google.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And nobody can really figure out if it's the true house because we don't know if the one in the UM segment is actually filmed at the house or if that's a fake house. So yeah, Samuel's still hanging out with the fam. He's been protecting those kids for years.
Wow.
So that's it.
What a fun little seggy.
Yeah, like it was really scary. It was very horror movie-esque.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminded me of the Tallman House, the Forgotten Few that we covered.
Yeah.
Yep. And most people on the message boards are like, out of all the ones that really scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, it was this one, Tallman House, those fucking bunk beds.
The haunted bunk beds.
Yep.
Cute.
So, yeah.
Nice work, girl.
Good job.
Sharesy feelsies. I
Oh.
have one I'm
Do it.
super excited about.
Go,
Yeah.
go.
So on HBO Max, there is a miniseries, and it is called The Lady and the Dale. And it is about...
Yes.
Yeah, girl.
Did you watch it already?
I watched the first 2 episodes. There's a third one out, so I'm going to try to watch it tomorrow. It is about our good friend Liz Carmichael, the quote-unquote inventor of the Dale. We covered her on season 1, episode 22, way, way back when we were just babies. And it is, oh my God, it's so good.
Really?
Yeah. They interview her.
Okay.
They interview one of her daughters. They interview her brother-in-law. There is so much that obviously UM couldn't get into.
Yeah.
It is cinematic. The
Oh
story.
my gosh, I can't wait.
It's so good. And it is so the Duplass brothers do it, and they did Wild Wild
Oh,
Country
wow.
and Evil Genius.
Yeah.
So they've gotten into true crime documentary making, and they're amazing at it. And it's so well done. It's really well produced. I just love it. I can't get enough of it. I'm so sad there's only 4 episodes, and
So it's real footage. It's not a acted
no,
show.
it's real footage, and it's
Okay.
interviews with people who were there from the beginning. There's one guy who was interviewed on UM, who's interviewed in the documentary as well.
Cool.
And it is just it's amazing. It's so good. You got to watch it.
I was so excited that I was counting down the days, and then I completely forgot when it actually happened. I
Yeah.
can't wait to watch it. I might
Yeah.
watch it tonight.
Yeah, definitely. It's so fun. I want to show it to Jamie. I'm going to wait until they're all out and then rewatch it with him because I think he'll really like it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how it was going to be, so I watched the first 2 by myself. But it's
Yeah.
great. It's great. You don't even have to be
Yay.
into anything. You don't even have to be into true crime. It's like a Catch Me If You Can kind of story. You know?
just
Yeah.
human interest.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. It's
Oh,
great. Yeah.
So cool. And the 3 of us were saying, just very underreported for what
Yeah.
a wild story it is.
And it's so much crazier than I even knew, it just goes so deep, and it's incredible. It's really great.
cool.
Mhm.
I'm excited.
Highly recommend.
Fun. Maybe people will find that episode because of this show.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
I didn't see what came up when I searched her, but maybe we might come up. Eliza, you have anything?
I do. I actually have been consuming things.
Yay.
It's a shock. Okay, first of all, did I already recommend the Neighborhood Listen on here?
No.
Which is the podcast. Okay. So this is a comedy podcast. It's an improv podcast with Paul F. Tompkins and Nicole Parker. And they play these, I think I've talked about Paul F. Tompkins on here before. He's
He's
one of
got
my
his hands
favorite.
in so many things.
He's great.
Oh my gosh.
He's great.
He's such a honey.
He's in everything.
So he and Nicole Parker play these characters who live in this place called Dignity Falls, and they are highlighting posts that people put on. They don't call it this for legal reasons, but they pull real posts from the Nextdoor app.
My favorite.
Oh my
I
god!
love Nextdoor.
Yes.
So then they, one of them, the first one they read, they'll just talk about it and how weird it is, but they're putting it all in the context of that we live in Dignity Falls and blah blah blah, and they're so funny. And then the middle one, they have other improv comics on, and they will be like, all right, this next posting, we're going to read it, and then we have this person here to talk with us. And so they read this insane posting, and it's real from Nextdoor, and then one of their friends comes on and plays the person who wrote this posting.
Oh my god! I
Nextdoor.
love that.
And then they
love
just
that.
make a backstory to it, and now there's a backstory with the character Nicole plays and their audio engineer and how they're like married, and so he's kind of a part of it too. His name's Doug. It's so funny and it is so delightful, and everyone has to go listen to it right now. It is the best.
Oh,
What's
I
it
love
called
that.
again? What's it called?
It's called The Neighborhood Listen.
The Neighborhood
Now,
Listen.
my only punch up for this show, that if anyone knows PFT, let him know I said this because I think it's pretty good. And also, if anyone knows PFT, his wife loves true crime, and so tell her that to listen to our podcast. And I love I can't remember if I've talked about their podcast together before. But Paul F. Tompkins and his wife, oh my gosh, let me find her name.
Does he have like 10 podcasts? I feel like he is in so many podcasts.
He's in Freedom, which is
yeah,
my
recommended
favorite
that
podcast.
before. Yeah,
with
Freedom.
Lauren Lapkus.
And then he's on Comedy Bang Bang all the time with Scott Aukerman, who is also in Freedom. Oh my gosh, he's so delightful and he's such a sweetie. Oh yes. His wife's name is Janie Haddad Tompkins, and she and him have a podcast together.
Stay F.
Homekins.
Yeah.
Because his name's Tompkins, he plays on his name all the time. So
That's
Stay
funny.
F. Homekins.
Cute.
Oh my God, so cute. So anyway, highly recommend. Oh yeah, but my punch up for the show is they can't say next door, so they call the app the Neighbor Hap, but I think they should have called it Backdoor.
Oh.
And that would have been such a good punch up, right? That's
Missed
funny.
opportunity.
I love
Missed
you.
opportunity.
I love
That's
you.
funny. I actually just thought of one.
Oh, go.
It's kind of boring, but I do now listen every day to the podcast, The Daily. I had never listened to it before
Oh.
until the insurrection was happening.
Mhm.
And I'm just not like I need to read the news person. Like it'll be in my face whether I like it or not, so I don't seek it out really. But during that and everything that was going on, I just like had to know everything, and that's when I started listening to it, and I really, really like it.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, the episodes range like around the half-hour mark, and it's really just kind of like talking about whatever the biggest news of the day is. And it's hosted by Michael Barbaro, and I just really like it. It's really well done. It's by New York Times, and it's
Cool.
Yeah, I've heard it's great.
yeah, they do really good interviews. And yeah, it's just kind of concise and a nice way to like start my day. So I like it.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Nice.
Love it. All right, girls,
Okay,
ladies,
friends,
sisters.
what are we doing?
What are we doing?
Next episode.
What are we doing?
What do
What
we
are we
got?
doing?
You're
What do we
first,
got?
girl. Oh, you got two.
Ooh, I got two. And they're both heartbreaking as usual. You know what? For this season finale, I just looked ahead. I have 2 lost loves, and I am so excited.
Yay! That's
Yes,
great.
girl,
you
you
deserve it.
So for the season finale, season 3, Mama's taking a break from all the murder and mayhem.
Mama,
And then I was
Mama
like,
is looking for some love.
I was like, watch me get one of these lost loves, and it'll be like the one where the girl ended up getting murdered by her boyfriend, like blown up. Do you
the
remember
murder
that one?
suicide.
Yeah. I was like, I feel bad for whatever last love I get because it's obviously just going to take a dark turn.
Yeah, something bad will happen. You can count on that.
Yeah. So in keeping with my tradition of doing total bummer, outrageous cases, I first have the unexplained death of Tracy Kirkpatrick.
And I have a wanted segment for a total dick bitch.
Oh, he's awful.
Steve Wilson. He's awful.
Yeah.
And then I've got a Lost Loves. I haven't had one in so long. And it's about Frankie Bloomer.
And then I wrap it up with a missing segment, and it is the story of Judy Hines.
Okay, friends, so join us then. And in the meantime, you can go to patreon.com/resolvedmysteriespodcast. If you're interested in supporting us there, like we said, you can get ad-free episodes, which with our new platform is very worth it, we think. And if you subscribe at the $5 a month level or higher, you also get 2 extra episodes a month and other goodies in the mail.
Oh, can I throw something out real quick about Patreon?
Yeah.
Sure.
Every now and then I'll browse, like, if somebody canceled their subscription and why.
Yeah.
And somebody had said they canceled because they couldn't listen to it in their regular podcatcher. So I would like to put it out there that you totally can do that. We have an RSS feed link that you just need to copy and paste into your podcatcher, and then you can listen to it in there.
Oh.
And it updates automatically.
Yes.
Yeah, because I am a patron.
And then it doesn't
and
close
I
every
wouldn't-
time you close your phone.
Yes, there's no way I would do it either if it wasn't in my regular.
Yeah, because someone was
podcast.
like, I like to listen as I go to bed, and I can't do that with this. And I was like, girl, yes, you can. So I just wanted to put it out there.
So what do? You copy and paste our RSS feed and then put it into like Apple Podcasts or something?
Yep.
Yeah, like when
whatever
you're going in to add a new show and it will find it.
Oh, cool.
Mhm.
Awesome. Good to know. Thanks.
And if
Katie.
anyone can't figure that out, message us. We'll help you.
Oh yeah, we're here to help.
To see photos we reference in the episode, follow us on Instagram at Resolved Mysteries Podcast, on Facebook and Twitter at Resolve the Pod, and you can contact us at resolvedmysteriespodcast.com, resolvedmysteriespodcast@gmail.com, or at our P.O. Box 14005, Portland, Oregon 97293. Send us your stories for listeners' short stack episodes so we can keep making those, and you get early access to those if you join our Patreon as well. You can email us or write to us about your favorite unsolved mystery or cold case or any nostalgia you have about the show, but really anything you want to. We love to hear from you. And lastly, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you like us, leave a 5-star review and tell a friend. And remember that for every review we receive, we donate $1 to a different organization, and this month's organization is Trans Clippers Project.
Sweet.
And we thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, guys.
So much.
We love you so.
So much. We love ya.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Of Judy Hines.
The 3 ways you said that to me sounded exactly the same. So,
Hines.
just so you know.
I think I can't see. I had to take my glasses off because they're pinching my ears. It's Judy Himes with an M.
Yes.